meet you virtually. I'm going to do a bit of introduction about BYOB, or Build Your Own Business, before we start, just to give everyone some context before I introduce our guest speaker today, which is Sharon Copeland Smith, who's on our screen, and she has her team as well to support her and back her up. So just a little bit about Bob for those who haven't been across us before. So Bob is a business that I started about 10 years ago, and I started it in the first iteration to help people who are small business owners or solopreneurs to start and scale their business. So I'll tell you a bit about my background just for context, because it'll make it more relevant to, why I formed Bob and what does it mean. So I was a corporate escapee once upon a time. I spent a lot of time in big corporations, big global corporations, Hewlett-Packard, IBM, Census, to name a few. Census is a division of Telstra. In fact, I got my phone book delivered last night, and the yellow pages and white pages together. It's about this thick. So Census, if you don't know, used to produce the yellow pages and the white pages, and there used to be, I remember, a double edition of the yellow pages and one of the white pages, which generated $1.6 billion of revenue back in the day. Now it looks like it's probably a couple 100,000. But back in the day, that was, we were in charge of the digital revolution of changing from print to digital. That was my division. So we created a whole bunch of really cool things, which led me down to the ecosystem of cutting edge digital. And when I was doing that, I actually had a couple of startups that I did whilst I was in corporate. One of which was Tribe. So Tribe is a influencer application. Tribe Digital connects influencers with, so celebrities, if you like, with marketing people in a digital ecosystem. And I started that with a guy named Jules Lund, and I sold out of that pretty early on. I did another application which is called, it was beer.com. So that was a nice beer finder app. Did it just for fun. And I also created Social Star. So Social Star was my primary business, and essentially our real focus was personal branding. So back then, just being online for a business person was unusual and new. So I started that with the objective of building a platform that would take over from LinkedIn and automate digital branding. We were a little bit ahead of our time, raised funds, went did that. And the technology just wasn't available at the time. So we kept doing consulting and growing the business in that. And it's interesting, in fact, that now with AI, I could do everything I wanted to do back then. So maybe we'll go back to that business plan one day. I also created Bob because after a couple of years of running my own business, I realized there was a lot of people like me who were solopreneurs, individual consultants, who didn't have a team and, didn't have people to talk to and relate to. And this is in the very early days when co-working spaces were just starting. There was a few entrepreneurial things going on, but there wasn't the ecosystem we have today. So I started a business club, and we used to catch up every once a month on a Friday and have Friday drinks, do presentations, practice our pitches, talk about our business, get feedback, advice, and so forth. So I ran that for many years, and it was a great ecosystem. I made a lot of great friends. One of our couples actually met and got married from that event, which was kind of a nice success story, and a lot of business partnerships got formed too. And then I stopped doing that kind of when COVID came around, and we've just relaunched it a couple of years ago, but in a different way, with a hybrid of online, offline, and we actually run a business course for corporate escapees through that group now, which I'll talk about in a moment. And Campus Life was another business I started after COVID, which was a business where we help students to connect to business owners to get experience, to get their first internship and their way into the workforce. That's a social enterprise we run. Being a teacher for many years at universities, I wanted to help those students that I was teaching. I did 3 degrees, a Master of Entrepreneurship, and then I went and taught at all these universities, which kind of gives context to why I started Campus Life and so forth. So everything's for a reason. Your background generally produces your future. So I wanted to sort of give a bit of that context, because really what we're here to do at Bob is to form a community to help business owners to thrive. So there's a lot of people who are out there by themselves, and a lot of people who will be listening, who want to hear from Sharon and the team regarding, digital, will be their own business. they'll be the person purchasing their domains, they'll be the person building their website or running their website. They have to make all the decisions themselves, because when you're in a small business rather than a big business, you don't have a team of advisors, you don't have an IT department, it's just you. So I hope this will be very helpful for them in terms of helping them educate themselves on what's available and the differences between a .com.au and any other form of domain. But in terms of BYOB, we're a community and we try and make a high impact with our constituents, whether they're doing a coaching program or they're in our free program, which is just a community where they can converse, come to our events, and get support they need to keep their business going. So the ecosystem is 3 parts, and I want to highlight this because we've just done the latest intake of Campus Life, where we've taken students from university into our mentorship program, which lasts 6 months. And that's a great opportunity for our people in our BYOB program and our Social Star clients to be matched and paired with one of these interns who does work for them and provides a lot of youthful enthusiasm, but also, they're all digital natives. So they have a lot of skills in areas that we tend not to be, because we're not on the platforms they are. We're not talking to people who have their age group, but they're a lot of the time our constituents or our employees. So it's really useful, and we found it very beneficial for our business owners to be paired with someone who they can mentor from a business perspective and which they can get services from for their business. So they get, useful, productive work, and they get to mentor, and it's a really nice combination of those services. And we match the Campus Life interns with our BYOB coaching people and also with Social Star clients. So we've just done a new intake, and that'll be available very soon. This is part of our team. So we've got a large team of, or a growing team, I should say, not large. We're still a small business, and we're expanding. We've got one person in Brisbane. We're looking to expand into Sydney this year, and hopefully across Australia to provide, physical services to our clients, not just digital. We love to run events. We love to connect people together, and we feel that having people, physically located can really help our business owners with those services. And as I said, community is what we're all about, and we run lots of events, and we hope that in the future, Sharon and team, you might participate in some of those and come along and meet and mentor some of our younger people. All right, so with that said, I would like to introduce you to, if you want to join the community, I should say, just scan that QR code for those people who are watching, and it's a free group that you can join, and then from there you'll learn about our events, and these webinars are part of that offering to just provide education and advice from people we have in our network that we think might be useful to running a business. Okay, so that's it from us. Now I'd like to introduce Sharon Copeland Smith, who has the fabulous role of running the .au for Australia, which is a fascinating part of the business that even after doing 20 years of digital, I really did not fully understand. I've known Sharon for a little while now. We met before she moved to that business, and we've been, working together a little bit on that. And I was fascinated when she told me all the ins and outs of what I could learn about, the .au domain. So what I wanted to do is I invited her to be a guest and share her knowledge on this part of the business, and I think you'll all find it very interesting. So it's about half an hour, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end, and you can type your questions in the chat if you like, and we'll get to them once she's finished. So I'd like to welcome Sharon to present.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello everyone, and I'll just see if we can swap these slides, and let's see if I share that.
Let's see if it'll come up. There you go.
I shall. There you go. Can you see that?
Perfect.
Thanks. Yeah, look, thanks very much for having me, Andrew, and yeah, really pleased to connect with this community. Hearing that you're mostly solo sort of shop people, whether you're, I think you said corporate escapees, Andrew, or consultants, solo entrepreneurs, or perhaps people supporting those sort of people. And yeah, I think we all want, when we're in those situations, we want to be our best and be our best for success. So I'm really hoping today I can demystify domain names for you and give you some of those practical tools so that you can succeed. So I thought today I'd just step through a couple of things, perhaps just starting with .au domain names. I guess the very basics around what is a domain name. Sometimes we take that even for granted in this space. I think it's also interesting we do research, consumer research, so we know a lot and understand a lot about what Australians think, so potential customers for you guys, what customers think about .au and why you might consider a .au domain name. Options, there's lots of options, and as a couple of years ago, there's some new options as well. So sometimes we don't understand or just not aware of what options are available to us and how you actually go about getting a domain name. It sounds simple, but it can be a bit of a tricky process as well. I actually work in the system, what I call behind the scenes at my organisation. So I'll give you a little bit of a sense of where my organisation fits in, but also some of the other players in the system, so you get a bit of a sneak peek of how it works and who you might be dealing with. And Andrew mentioned I do have a couple of team members on the line as well. In particular, I'd like to introduce Olga. Olga actually deals every day at the coalface with people who have all sorts of questions about .au, and so we thought it would be useful just to cover some of the common things that we come across for you to be aware of, and perhaps hopefully once you've got that improved awareness, we might actually help you avoid some of the common pitfalls that we see every day. So what is a domain name? I've got here example.com.au. So obviously it's a .au domain name. And I guess the easiest way to think about a domain name, it's kind of like your place on the internet. Where do you live? And the first sort of thing I think that people sometimes come up against is they think that they might buy a domain name. You know, Andrew suggested to me, go and buy sharon.com.au. So I've bought my domain name, it's mine. And unfortunately, I'm here to tell you a domain name is more like a driver's license rather than a car. It's not something that you can buy. It's actually a license that you buy. And the reason that's really important is because, much like a driver's license, it's something that you'll need to continue to renew if you wish to keep using a domain name. And people most commonly look for a domain name to either build a website or to use it in their email address. So again, it's not a buy once and set and forget. It's not yours, you can't own it, even though we commonly hear that phrase, I've bought my domain name. So really important point, as I said, it's not a buy once and set and forget. It's a license that you buy, and it is something like all life admin. You know, we have to renew our driver's license or, you know, pay our bills regularly. This is part of that cycle. So really important that you think when you're running your business behind the scenes, this is a really important sort of, I guess, administrative function that you need to be constantly thinking about. And what license can you buy? Well, we've got a few options, but before I dive into those options, I did just want to share some of the research that I mentioned that our organisation does. And we've done this for a couple of years now, most recently last year, but also a couple of years before that. So we're starting to see some common patterns and trends in that research. The last research we did, I think we asked about 2,000, just over 2,000 Australian consumers, so potential customers, what they think and what they know about .au domain names. And we know that customers are choosing to go to a .au website and interact with a .au website because they really like to support local business. Australians like to support Australians. So when people see the .au, that's an indication to them that, oh, I'm dealing with something in Australia, covered by Australian law, and certainly if I want to buy something, so you might have, for example, I don't know, online e-learning booklets that I can buy online, it will be in Australian currency. So there's a lot that attracts Australian customers to a .au website. In fact, we know 3 in 4 Australian consumers are much more likely to trust you and your business if they see that you have a website with a .au on the end. So that's quite a compelling, I guess, trust story if you are in the business of offering services to the Australian market. And we know about half will only purchase from a website. So as I said, it might be something as simple as you might be selling an ebook or whatever it is you're selling. About half of Australians, they'll only purchase if you're on a .au. So hopefully by the end of this, Andrew, I'm convincing you, you should not have bought beer.com, you should have bought beer.com.au. And people do look for the .au. So we also, our research shows us that people are actually looking for that Australian link when they're about to purchase a product online. So I thought I'd just set the scene with that we do have a high level of trust in .au, and we see that in the Australian public as well. So the reports that we do are available to the public. They're on our website, and I'll share that link at the end of this presentation if you wanted to sort of unpack that a little bit more. But I think there's definitely something there for you to think about in terms of if you are offering services to people within our country, people are looking for that .au. I mentioned before options. So if I've convinced you to buy beer.com.au instead of beer.com, what are the options? Most people have heard of, and I think I used that in the example, example.com.au. But a few years ago, we also launched .au. So you can be beer.au, for example. You don't need a com or anything in between. You could be andrewford.au. So some people like to build up a little bit of a suite of domain names or a bit of a stable. So yeah, you can have the com.au if you're a commercial entity. You can also have a straight .au. So they're the 2 most common options available. And as I said, the .au direct, which we call it, has only been available in the last couple of years. So again, it's a little bit of a hidden treasure, but if you certainly want to build up a suite of names, many people we see have the com.au and are now buying the .au as well. There's also net.au available, and that tends to be more focused towards sort of the techie consulting sort of companies. So, you can be andrewford.net.au and you can be andrewford.id.au. So the ID is for an individual. So I'd say the com.au and the .au direct are the most common in terms of a small business. And as I said, it really goes down to sort of what business you're in and whether you want one for yourself as well, whether you want to add the net.au and the id.au. We also have a couple of more specialised spaces that are less available to the public in terms of if you've got a small business hat on. So org.au is really for the not-for-profit sector, ed.au for the education sector, and gov.au obviously for the government sector. And they do have, I guess, different requirements or rules. So for example, I couldn't just buy sharon.gov.au because I'm not a government agency, so the Department of Finance won't let me do that. But certainly there's no limit to how many dots you can have. As I said, some people build up a bit of a portfolio of dots. So if you wanted a com.au, you wanted a .au, if you wanted an id.au, again, there's no limit to how many licenses you can have, and there's certainly lots of options available. The unique thing about .au is to have any of these dots, you must have an Australian presence. So you must be an Australian company, an Australian citizen, some connection to Australia. And that's not the case for many other dots around the world. So there's, there's probably over 300 different domains. So .uk, for example, in the UK, you can have .ca for Canada, wherever you go around the world, .cn for China, there's lots of dots. Probably one of the things that puts Australia as one of the most trusted namespaces is the fact that we do require that Australian connection. Canada also requires that, so you must have a connection to Canada to get a .ca, but anyone can buy many of the other dots. So you really don't know who you're dealing with and who's got what dots, for example, in some of the other namespaces. And we basically make these names available to everyone, but it is on a bit of a first come, first served basis. So there might be two Sharons who want Sharon.au, or two .com.au, and there's another Sharon who wants .com.au. We've both got companies called Sharon. As long as we both meet the criteria, the person who got in first is the one who has that access to the license. So good to know. I think there's options. Good to know that there's no limit to how many dots you can have. Prefer you to have a .au. And also, getting quick, because it is a first in, first served system, and we do deal with a lot of issues at the coalface where we might have those two Sharons ring up and say, but my company called Sharon is much better than the other company called Sharon, and it's not our job to decide which company is better. We say, well, the first Sharon out, the rule is, the requirement is the person who got in first. So get in quick, get in as much as and get in as many .aus as you like. How do you get a .au? So if you go to our website, and as I said, I'll share the details of this later on, there's three key things when you're thinking about getting a .au, and we have a little bit of a step-by-step on our website, so please feel free after this to go in and have a look. The first step is the name has to actually be available. So we have a tool online where you can check, does someone already have sharon.com.au, or is that a name that's available? So as I said, it is a first in, first serve. So that's the first thing. Is it actually available? As I said, for .au, you must be Australian. You must have an Australian presence. You must verify that you're an Australian. And then you can find a provider to buy that domain name license through. And I'll talk to you about who those providers are a little bit later as well. So the first step is it available, and do you match the criteria to be able to have that particular name that you're looking for? So if you're a company, you can have a com.au, but if you're not a company, it's not for you. As I said, org.au, you must be a not-for-profit. So you can't be a small business, a small commercial business, and try and register an org.au. Step two is actually, choosing the name. What name? And there's a couple of, I guess, criteria again around choosing a name. We have a set of rules around, you can only use A to Z and 0 to 9 and hyphens. It must be longer than 2 letters. So I couldn't register s.com.au. It must be sc.com.au. So there are actually some requirements in terms of the sort of alphabet that you can use and the letters that you can use and where you put a hyphen. So it's really got to fulfill those criteria. And then we've got some rules around, if I'm selling lollipops, it really needs to sort of be close to or match either my business name or an acronym of my business name, a trademark that I have, a good or a service that I said. So I can't register, for example, cats.com.au if I'm selling lollipops. There's got to be a logic there. And then there's a whole lot of tips we've got online as well. It's a little bit like if you are starting up a business and you're selecting a business name, it's a little bit the same around a domain name. You know, there's some tips and tricks there that we've got online as to what you might think about. And then the last thing is, how does a domain name fit into other things, particularly online presence or other digital things that you might be thinking of for your business? And a common one that we get is, oh, could I just set up a shop inside Instagram or one of the other platforms, for example? What's the difference? Why would I bother getting a .au domain license? And I guess it really comes back to that credibility and that trust about what Australians are looking for and what you know, Australians want to see the .au to be assured that who they're dealing with has an Australian connection, and when things go wrong, we can, you know, easily be reached. You're in control if you've got the .au and you set up your own website. You can, you know, that's all of your own content. Whereas some of the other platforms, you're actually giving your content to platforms. That Australian local advantage is the key thing that we look for and we push if your business is in Australia and you're looking for Australian customers. We actually monitor, so another part of my job is not just I guess this sort of system around rules and who can have a domain name and what name you can call it, but it's also the technology behind the scenes. So we do look for traffic patterns, you know, how many people are coming in looking for .au websites, and there's certainly a lot of global interest. We see a lot of global traffic coming in to land on .au websites, which is really good. And we're pretty secure as well in terms of one of the things that Olga's team does on a daily basis is goes in and have a look at sort of individual websites. We audit domain names and we have a look and see, for example, things that we commonly see is it might be, say, I don't know, a web page of a kindergarten, for example, and it looks terrific, and you go to page 1 and it all looks fine, and you go to about page 3 in the website, and then here comes an ad or a link for online gambling, something like that. So it's a compromised or a hacked website. So Olga's team is continually in the .au domain space, looking and weeding out and trying to sort of clean up some of those sorts of issues. So we have a very good reputation globally, that we are more secure and we are trusted, and we do a lot of work in trying to keep it a very safe and secure namespace. So there are a couple of the reasons why we would recommend a .au domain name over some of the other social platforms that you might have easy access to, or even coming back to the .com. So if you do go to our website, as I said, it's 3 easy steps, and it will actually link you to further tips. It will give you tools, and it will give you things like, as I said, in online real time, you can go in and say, look, I've got a particular name in mind. Is it available, or has someone already got that license? So there's tools that you can interrogate as well and get that information. This system. Now, this was a mystery to me. I must admit, I've had my .au. If anyone's interested, copelandsmith.com.au is gone. It's taken. I got in over a decade ago. But I had no idea how it really worked behind the scenes. And Andrew mentioned we met a few years ago. I moved into this role about a year ago, and it's really opened up my eyes how things work. So you might identify as a customer, someone who's either bought a domain name, or now you know it's a domain name license, or someone who's thinking about buying a domain name license. In our system, we call that a registrant, so someone who is registering for our license. Now, where do you get a .au domain name? That's sort of the provider box I've got there on the screen. In terms of resellers, so where can you go to get a .au domain name? You can go to probably about 60,000 different places to get a .au domain name. And it's commonly perhaps a small, it might be your local web developer. You might just search online. It's very diverse, and I couldn't give you a list of the 60,000 plus people who you can access a domain name through. But what I can tell you is they're all linked to what we call registrars. And those registrars are about 30 companies, and you'll see all of those providers on our website, and you can go and select which provider suits you, a little bit like an electricity or a telco company. Which provider do you want to go through? You can select a provider. And the reason I recommend that wherever you get your .au domain name from, always trace it back to who is the registrar, who is that person in the middle, that company in the middle, that I can link things back to, because they are the people that we accredit to be in the system. So they are like the sort of trusted people in the middle. Some will sell directly to you, some will sell through reseller chains, but the key thing is there's about 30 of them, and they have accreditation with us. And it's quite, we have rules around who can be in that supply chain, if you like. They have to meet certain security standards. Again, they have to have an Australian presence. They don't have to be an Australian company, but must have an Australian connection, particularly for, an ABN. They must follow our privacy laws in Australia, and they must have experience dealing with the public. So that is a really key and core part of the system. So if you sort of think about either buying a domain name or you have one, I would strongly encourage you to sort of trace it back, ask the question, who is my registrar, who is that person that we're dealing with, because they're the ones who have an agreement with us, and they're the ones who are following the rules and the expectations and the obligations that we put on them. And as I said, there's about 30 of them, and they're all on our website, and you can read the spiel. They're all slightly different and have different service offerings, but you find the provider that suits you. So then that comes to us. Who are we? Where do I come from? .au domain administration. So a lot of people sometimes think, are we the government authority in there regulating things? Who are you? So we're a not-for-profit organisation. We're not a government body. We're a little bit more like, I guess, regulating on behalf of the community, so sort of a self-regulatory body. We have an agreement with the international body to technically run .au, and that's called ICANN. And we do have, if you like, what's called a terms of endorsement, or a sort of a formal sort of blessing from the federal government to say, look, you as an organisation, can you please do this on behalf of the nation? So we certainly have connections to government, but we're not a government regulator. What I've been talking about today, about who can have a domain name, what you can call it, what's available, is all packaged up in what we call the licensing rules. Now, we're not even here to make those rules up. So our job is to administer those rules on behalf of the community. The rules are actually set by people like yourselves online. So anyone in the community can have a say on what those rules should look like, and how you want the system to work. So we administer the rules on behalf of the community, whether you've got an industry interest, whether you're an individual person on the street, whether you come from a consumer body, whether you are a government body, you might be from the education sector, anyone can have a say on what those rules look like. And it's actually timely. I did speak to Andrew last year. We were going to run this webinar, but of course, Christmas and other things got in the way. But we do actually have those rules open for public consultation at the moment. So again, you can hop on our website. You can see what some of the issues are that the community's been raising. You can make an online submission. You can come to one of our events or webinars that talk you through these the rules and some of the issues, and you can have your say and be part of actually making those rules. So as I said, we're a not-for-profit that administers the rules, but the rules are very community-based, and we would love input from even small businesses. Any of those sorts of audiences that make use of domain names would be wonderful. So I should also declare, though, I'm not here to sell domain names. That's not our job. It's just to technically make .au work, and also then to administer these rules. But we do get, I think it's $8.64, the exact numbers on our website. So every time a .au is sold, that's what the registrars provide to us to keep this system going. So I did just want to let you know I'm not here, as I said, to actually sell you a .au domain name, but if you do happen to buy one, I thought I'd be transparent to let you know that we get $8.64, I think it is. And that keeps us going as a not-for-profit. And yeah, you might want to have a closer look at us on the website. You'll see that a lot of the funds that we do generate go back into community projects. We have a public benefit program as well. So that's sort of who's working in the system. And as I said, the key, if you're a customer, I think the key thing for you is to know that there is a link back to one of the accredited providers on our website. And certainly, if you want to have a closer look at the rules within the licensing system, please get on and have your say as well, or come to one of our other sessions. I said I'm not here to sell you a .au domain name, but we do, as I said a couple of years ago when we launched .au Direct, we have had a campaign that's, I've seen it going last year, where we are trying to get the word out, some of those sort of trusted messages, that we're Aussie. And then if you looked into some of the reasons of why you might have a .au, you can certainly go to this website, and that gives you, again, a sense of what it's all about, why you might consider it, and then how you actually go about getting it. So that's one that, I don't know, has anyone seen that around town? I'm not quite sure where we put those ads, but certainly online, but also physically as well. And if fairy bread's not your thing, there's a range of them. You might have seen that I think we've got a wombat, and we've got a football, all things Aussie. And the Lifesavers kindly lent this image to us. We can use their life-saving caps. So yeah, get your AU is the message. And as I said, it's not our job necessarily to sell .au domain names, but we certainly sort of, encourage it and promote it. And, there's lots of benefits. I'm hoping I've convinced you compared to a .com. So some things that we see on a daily basis that we thought would be worth mentioning, particularly if you already have a .au domain name license, or if you're thinking of purchasing one. As I said, it's not a buy once, set and forget. It is something that you need to renew. And I think one of the most common things we see is people forget to renew their license, and then they lose their name, and they wonder why. And often they forget to renew because sometimes they think the reminders coming through their provider are spam, or it's gone into a spam folder, or we've often seen, well, that used to go to the receptionist and she left, so no one was picking up those emails, and so we haven't renewed our license. So there is a little bit of grace, a little bit of leeway in the rules, but essentially the message is it's not something that you've bought to own, you know, like a house. It's a license that needs to be renewed. So it's more like a driver's license rather than a car, if you like. Really important obligation when you do get yourself a domain name license. There's actually an obligation in there to keep your contact details up to date. So really important, again, if we see something like I mentioned before, we might pick up in our travels, say an online gambling page or something like that on your website, then we need to be able to contact you. So really important that, again, a bit like a driver's license, if you've moved address or you know, you've got a new person who's going to look after this for you, we've got to be able to contact you. Another common one Olga deals with most days, and her team, you might start off as a sole trader. You might grow something into a business. You might sell your business. You might retire, all sorts of combinations. Every time you have a change of circumstance that made you eligible in the first place for that domain name license, it is a digital asset that you've got to look after. So again, if you've you know, you changed your business circumstances, then that license also needs to reflect that. So you need to you know, keep that up to date and keep it in sync with where your business is at. And the last one I've mentioned, we do often see, particularly very old domain, you know, people that have had domain names for a long time, they might have built a website in a very old technology, much more likely or easily compromised or hacked. So as I said, that page 3, we look at it and go, that's no longer the childcare centre, that's actually, you know, taking me to an online gambling site. When you sign up to have your license, there's actually an obligation in the license that you won't on purpose or inadvertently do something illegal or you know, bad like this. So you've actually, there's an onus on you to make sure that if you're using that domain name license in this instance, you're keeping it as secure as possible. And a little bit like you had your square before, and Andrew, I feel like we're on a membership drive. I mentioned before, we are a not-for-profit organisation. Absolutely anyone who's over 18 and interested in the internet that could have a .au domain name is free to join up to be a member. As I said, we're not-for-profit, membership is free. What do you get? Little tidbits, some further insights. We do have a lot on our website, I would say, for free for all anyway. But if there's anything new that comes out, we do sometimes hold events online and in person, and you do have an opportunity to have your say, not only in things like I mentioned before, these licensing rules or the way the system works, but also at our annual general meeting and voting for board members and things like that. So you can actually have a say in the organisation. So we have I think about 6,000 odd members, so across the nation, and people from all sorts of interests and sectors. So I guess the other thing I would say is if you do start to get involved and engaged, you're probably going to meet some really interesting people as well. So hoping I've convinced you to buy beer.com.au and not beer.com. So we are auDA, or as I said, the .au domain administration.org.au. So if you want to know a little bit more about us, if you want to become a member, if you want to have a say on how it all works, or you just want those tools, access to tools to get you started for a .au, or you just, maybe you've had, a bit like me, you had that .au domain name license for decades and or a decade at least, and you just really didn't know what you'd signed up for, and you weren't really clear about what your options and obligations were, then it's a good refresher as well. And certainly if you haven't got a .au direct, there's lots of information on there as well. So that's about all I was going to share initially, Andrew. It was a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, but hoping for the people online or for the people who are watching this recording at a later date that it's given you a little bit of bit more background, I guess, as to what .au is and why you might consider .au as well.
Thanks, Sharon. It's always interesting to see these things that we understand every day. Like we all type in and search and go to websites every day, but we don't actually know who manages it. You know, where does it come from? And understanding the fact that you have real people out there checking websites to make sure they're secure, and that the fact that they're more trusted and people prefer to click on a .au because they believe it's local and more secure is actually something I didn't actually know. You know, the common, from a marketing perspective, the common thing I hear people say is, I want a .com because it's sort of the best, if you like. Whereas I always have preferred com.au for kind of the reasons you said, but I didn't really understand why. But I knew that it signaled Australia, and I believe it works better with SEO in Australia than a .com. And that's just from a Google search algorithm point of view, not actually from your side. And a couple of things I wanted to sort of fun facts I put in the chat here is that Google, which is probably the world's most valuable domain, so google.com, actually forgot to renew their domain. So, and an employee got access to the ownership. So even though people think that, you know, domains might be a small part of things, I've had clients who have forgot to renew, and they've had to go through a legal battle to get theirs back. And if you think about it, if you lose your domain, your name can be owned by somebody else. You know, it's not IP registration, but it's close to it, right? It's where people remember to go. It's, you know, people have might saved in their browser. People might just type it in because it's easy. So there's a fairly big risk to not doing this well. And I can't tell you how many clients that I have had to work with to go, oh, yeah, I've got a domain, I have no idea where it is. You know, like you said, you know, it was the receptionist, she's left, it's on their email address, it's expired. And it's really quite a significant item to keep attention to. So, you know, I wanted to highlight to people out there that it's important to know where this is. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point you mentioned about the intellectual sort of property, you know, especially two parties. So one of the processes we offer is a dispute resolution referral. So if you do have more of we don't sort out intellectual, you know, property issues between two parties, but we've certainly got a provider that we can refer you to, and you know, we can provide all the background information to. It's called WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organisation, I think it is. So we do often send parties off there and say, look, we can't help you sort out the intellectual property bit, but we have a provider that we can refer you to. But yeah, I think that's the most important thing, Andrew, that people, you know, would you forget to really renew your driver's license? You know, maybe sometimes, maybe you would, but, and I should say on renewal, at the moment, the system, and Olga can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can renew for a year, you can renew for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So as long as you remember, it's not like you would have to do the administration every year. You could choose the 5-year renewal option if you wanted to. So it's not necessarily, yeah, you've got choice there as well. So just as long as you do it, you know, if you want to keep it. Yeah. Because there's certainly someone else that will pick it up, that they'll be eligible for it in their own way. And one of the things they may wish to do is sell it to you. So you could end up, you know, yeah.
Paying a lot for it.
if it's
Yeah.
if it's valuable. It's a valuable digital asset. You know, that's
exactly.
the way to look at it, not just a
Yeah.
website or something on the side.
Yeah, I've got
That's
lots
what
of
happened
experience.
in Argentina as well. They had to pay for it back because someone bought it, and then that employee that never renewed it, someone else picked it up, and then they had to buy it back at a higher cost than it would have cost them to just renew the license. So it is a very common example that can occur. So the only difference with a car is that if you forget to renew your driver's license, I guess you might not be aware and continue to drive your car out there because there's no mechanical issue with the car. But if you forget to renew your domain name, you won't be able to access emails, your website will be down, and it has a bit more of an operational kind of impact on the business. And those are the common signs for some people that may not have realized that the license has expired, sorry. But as soon as the website's not active, clients can't contact you and you can't send an emails, or it's having that impact, that's when they'll either contact the registrar, the reseller, or us and try and renew it as soon as possible, so they keep the license and keep operating a business.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And I wanted to mention that the connection to email. So people often don't understand how that works, but just for those people who might be watching, if I have andrewford.com.au and I want an email address on that domain, then I have to have the domain to have the email address of, info@andrewford.com.au. If I wanted to have that, I have to have the domain. And so the ownership of one is the ownership of the other. And we get a lot of clients who might have long names. So it might be, progression bookkeeping, and it's quite long to type. So they might go PBS. So they might have both, and they use one for email and they use one for their website. So, and it's such an important point, because you're right, you might not notice your website goes down, but you sure know that your email doesn't work in a day, right? And then you've got to fight to get it back if someone's bought it. And, that disruption could be mission critical for your business. So, it is something, our best practice is that we tell, and I'd love your feedback on this, is we tell people have your own domain registrar. So we used to buy them and store them for clients, but then we found that it was difficult with them not owning it themselves and extending on buying other ones, renewing, credit cards expire, those sorts of things. And we set it to auto renew. So just you put a credit card in, but then what happens is your credit card expires, and if you're not paying attention, then because your credit only lasts certain. So it does require maybe a reminder in your system to go, hey, by the way, and I know that there's, so that's one thing. And then another thing is there's a lot of scams. So what we find is that, and because a lot of the domain stuff is in the public, you can see it, and I'd be curious onto why that is, but I find that people get emails saying, hey, your domain's about to review, just do it with us, it's $150. And clients go, yeah, I'm using these people. I'm like, it should be $27, and I don't know why you're using them. So, and it's a legitimate business. They're just advertising and inflated because people just don't know. So, so I'd be curious on your comment about why it's public and why it can't be private, I guess.
Yep. So pretty much in relation to that, Andrew, there's a few things. So firstly, a domain name, any domain name, .au domain name can be renewed 90 days prior to expiry. And once it expires, there's a 30-day grace period during which it can be renewed as well. So there are locks in the domain name license that prevent it from being renewed prior to that 90-day cycle before the expiry date. So that is for protection and security for the customer and all those unsolicited notices that might go out. Another thing that we offer is we've got a public, if whoever is unsure of the expiry date of a domain name license, we've got a publicly available tool, which is the password recovery tool, where you can access your expiry date at any point in time. Similar to the Whois lookup tool that we have, you can access domain information and have a look at who the provider or registrar is with contact information. The only thing that's not public on the Whois lookup tool is the expiry date, and that is again for all those unsolicited notices that some people might try and take advantage of and send to customers. So and the third part is people can also access that through the registrar or reseller portal that they might have, which is the customer interface as well. So there's a few different ways to check your information, whether the domain name is up for renewal or has expired. And definitely, if you're not sure, or if there is an unsolicited email, if there is a phishing attack or something, anything that you're not sure about, please feel free to reach out to us or contact us to have a look at. Sometimes we do have those type of cases occurring where there's unsolicited phishing emails going out, and then we can certainly have a look at that. A lot of the times it's not .au domains as well. It might be a .com that's sending those phishing emails, but we can certainly assist and take action on those matters as well.
Yeah,
that's great to know that.
.com. We can't help you with .com. We only look after .au, and I think that's one of the other things. People have, potential issues in other namespaces, and it's like, yeah, we can only look after .au. So I think that's another reason to think .au, at least there's a system and support around it. Whereas, .com, anyone can pick up a .com. There's no rules who can have it. Good luck to find. It's sort of run, I think VeriSign's the registrar in, they run the registry, American company, whereas at least there's a local structured support system around .au. But yeah, sometimes people have issues with other namespaces, and we're like, .com, we can't help you. You're on your own. So yeah,
it's kind of like trading with an Australian bank. At least there's some sort of fraud protection, rather than trading, I don't know, on an international platform or a crypto. There's good luck. So yeah, that's a really important thing to know, is because I didn't even know you could contact you for support, to be honest. So knowing that is great comfort, that we can send our clients there and say, hey, if you've got an issue that we can't resolve, try you guys. And
Andrew, I must say, on our website, there's a general inquiry form. If you fill all of that out, it's not too onerous. It'll go straight to Olga's team. And so it automatically will get allocated out, and someone will look after that. It's not like you send us an email and it goes into a black hole.
The wilderness.
Yes.
Like most companies.
You'll have a response.
There's a real person. Look.
It's a real team as well.
Yeah,
and interns currently as well during the summer period. So full house.
Yeah. Hey, I know I'm sort of dominating, but I've got so many questions. So one thing for the people watching, and I just know the questions I get from small business owners, so I'm sort of representing them, is they don't know the Whois lookup tool. So maybe if you could explain what that is, where the data comes from, where you can access it, because there's lots of different websites you can look that up, but we use it all the time because clients lose their domains and don't know where to go, and we can use that and go, oh, it's registered to this person. Like, oh yeah, I remember him from, there's an IT provider once upon a time. So maybe if you could explain how that process works, that'd be really useful.
Do you want to do that, Olga?
Sure. So the Whois lookup tool, it's, I guess, like a tool where you can look up any domain name license in Australia, or I should say .au domain name. They're not in Australia. Sometimes businesses are overseas if they're international corporations that have trademarks and then meet the Australian presence requirement. So it does provide, it is kind of a customer protection kind of mechanism, or like consumer mechanism as well, because you can just go onto the Whois lookup tool, whois.org.au, and have a look at who that domain name license is registered to. So that gives you thanks Andrew for sharing that, the legitimate business, like auDA.org.au is registered to the .au Domain Administration Limited. That also includes an Australian company number. So if you're extra vigilant, or you really want to check out whether that company exists, you can go onto ASIC and have which is also a public lookup tool as well, and have a look at that ACN number indeed exists and it indeed belongs to that company. And then if you're extra vigilant, you can check whether it's gone bankrupt or liquidated, or it's actually a valid Australian company, a registered company, because there's a lot of issues that can occur like that. A lot of businesses, the reality is, the longer someone has held onto a domain name license, as Sharon said earlier as well, the more likely it is that there might be some business changes to that operating environment. And then sometimes you might be interested in buying that domain name, so there's contact information for that business as well. Or sometimes someone may have ordered a product from that company and they haven't received it. Now, we don't have jurisdiction over whether you've ordered a package or a product for a company and you have not received that product, but certainly people do look up our WHOIS information and those contact details from that company to get in touch with them in relation to the order they've made. Or if you're interested in the domain name, you can certainly have a look at this contact information to reach out about that domain name as well. Or in terms of the compliance side of things, if you don't think that license holder is eligible to hold the license, or you think that they shouldn't have that domain name, people also do submit complaints to us about various domain names that they don't see a connection with, or they don't believe it is a legitimate business. So there's that. So those are some of the common uses of the WHOIS lookup tool, but it pretty much gives you a bit more information about that license. There are other ways, of course, of looking at things, and sometimes the WHOIS lookup tool has contact information that is listed on the website itself as well, or sometimes it might have different information, and it depends how meticulous someone is. They compare those or not, but it's definitely a solid ground to like for each research and looking briefly into a business and that information that's involved.
Yeah.
And the information comes, so we sort of consolidate, the registrars all send the details in and we kind of consolidate it. So one of the things that we do is we're the registry operator. Yeah, and there is a WHOIS policy, so it's clear to either the public or people who might be in the registry what's made public as well. But yeah, that comes to us through that registrar feed. Those 30 in-between companies feed their data to us, and it's consolidated into like a master registry that we look after. So yeah, that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
And it's live information as well. So if you go and change your ABN on a domain name right now, that will automatically reflect on the public WHOIS. So it's live data.
Yeah, and it's not just useful for lost domains. I find that one of the best sort of predictors of spam email is looking at the domain from the sender. And I think a lot of people probably do that. And if you don't, you probably should. And so if you get an email from, say, GoDaddy saying, renew your domain, it's $150, and like, does that seem correct? You can go and reverse look up the domain that it's sent from and go, is it really them? Is it au.godaddy.com? Is that right? Or is it info at, and see whether it's a legitimate email address. And a lot of the time, that's the precursor to know that it's a fake and spam email before you click on anything. So that's a good way to do that. We're actually over time, so although I do have more questions, I'll leave it there and I'll probably just read your website. It's probably a good idea. I have registered to become a member, so I'll be on that list now. So yeah, I wanted to do that before and I just forgot, so it's good prompting to do it straight away. So I do appreciate your time and information. I'm sure we'll get lots of questions from people as they watch the recording, and we will direct them to your website to get greatly assisted by your team. So I do appreciate everyone attending the BYOB webinar, and we will see you at the next one, which we'll run every month now that we're back in the new year from Christmas. And I thank you, Sharon and team, for your time and attention. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much.